There are smaller airlines in India which are struggling to survive. There's a legal battle SpiceJet is going through. Go First is, in financial distress, barely exists right now, technically exists. Is this shake-up in the industry, which a lot of people said would likely take place, isn't that a bad thing for the customer? Because if you have a duopoly type situation, two very large airlines, then fares would likely go up.
Well, if you look at the economic basis of your statement, it's unfounded. By its very nature, the aviation business is a very inelastic business in terms of pricing. The minute you start raising prices, your demand drops off a cliff. So it's not an elastic market.
Right.
That being said, as Civil Aviation Minister, I would like to have a minimum of 4 to 5 players in the space.
Akasa is a strong third, in fact, so I should actually mention that.
I was just going to come to that. So while we do talk about the airlines which are undergoing some issues at this point of time, and that is pertaining to their way of doing business and not the industry in itself, so there's very little that one can do to intervene.
Yeah.
Whether they are contractual issues or whether they're the legal issues. For the first time in over 2 decades, you've seen a new airline being born in India in the form of Akasa. And you've seen that fledgling, nestling airline go from 2 aircraft to 20 aircraft in a period of 12 months. Now that's a record, right? Across the world, that's a record. So my hat's off to them in terms of how they've grown their capacity. They also have a very ambitious target of going to almost 70 airplanes in the next 3 to 4 years. Having said that, Vishnu, also I think it's important for you to concentrate on the smaller aircraft, the regional airlines. Udan, the Ude Desh Ka Aam Nagrik scheme, has not only connected people, has not only connected cities, but it has, in its wake, given birth to 3 to 4 new airlines in this country. Fly 91 was born because of Udan. Fly Big has been born because of Udan. India One Air has been born because of Udan. Star Air has been born because of Udan. And so therefore you're going to see you're seeing a huge spurt in regional connectivity to not tier 1 to tier 2, but really tier 2 to tier 3 and tier 3 to even tier 4 cities with 9-seater aircraft and 3-seater aircraft. And that's the revolution that is going to be unfolding itself in India over the next couple of years as well.
But let me ask you, there's a CAG report which has come out.
So there will be a hub and spoke arrangement where a lot of these smaller regional airlines and smaller aircraft will feed onto the tier 2 cities, which will then be taken on by the narrow-bodied aircraft to tier 1 and other cities.
And so that's the change. But, be direct as you always are with us. Are you somewhat disappointed at the pace at which Udan has developed as a scheme? Because if you look at the CAG report, 52% of awarded regional routes could not commence operations. Only 30% of regional routes which commenced ops have completed 3 years during the initial period. We wanted a lot more, I think.
I think, Vishnu, in life, you can always say a glass is half full or a glass is half empty, right? The fact that the scheme was born in 2016, it's only been 7 years, and the fact that you have 495 routes that have connected people that were never ever connected by civil aviation in this country ever before. The fact that cities that were on the civil aviation map in World War II and were obliterated from that map soon after World War II are now being reconnected by civil aviation. Case in point for you is a city on the western coast on the eastern coast of Orissa, Jharsuguda, Roopsi in Assam, Kishangarh in Rajasthan, Darbhanga in Bihar, all completely unconnected. Third point, the fact that 4 regional airlines have been born because of Udan. There was no way they would have even come into existence if Udan had not been in place, if a viability gap funding principle had not been in place. Fourth point, the fact that through Udan you have built out 74 airports. 74 airports in this country on a regional basis have been built out because of the funding from Udan, 4,500 crores. Utkela was the last one, which I inaugurated, right?
But
So, when you roll out a scheme, the scheme has to have, people like yourselves have always argued that there must be a sunset clause.
Yes.
So every scheme has to have a sunset clause, right? And so Udan has a sunset clause of 3 years.
Yes.
That I will give you this viability gap funding for 3 years. So you will be able to fly that route based on my VGF for 3 years. Post that, either it becomes viable and carries on, or if it doesn't, then we've got to look at other routes.
Right.
Right? And the fact that you've got at least close to about 25 to 30% of those routes today becoming sustainable in terms of eventual routes, right? That itself is a huge feather in the cap for civil aviation. And all the 4 points that I mentioned to you, which would have never happened, the very fact today that through Udan you have carried 1,31 lakh passengers in this country in the last 7 years who would have never flown in an aircraft.
No, I agree. I agree. And these numbers...
And you've had 234,000 flights through Udan, which would have never happened.